All right, let's talk about the Victor Harbor Horse Tram. You know, that iconic attraction. But we're not just here to talk about the horses. We're going to dig deep into the numbers, the finances behind it, and a really important governance decision that, honestly, affects the entire community. So let's dive right in.
Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off right away. The big number, the one that gets everyone's attention, is about $650,000. Yep, that's the annual cost, the total exposure for the community when it comes to the Horse Tram Authority. It's a huge number, and it's pretty much the reason we're breaking all this down for you today.
So when you hear a number like that, the first thing you're probably asking is, how? How on earth did we get here? And that's exactly the question we're going to answer. We're going to follow the money, look at the data, and trace the chain of decisions that brought us to this exact spot.
First up, let's get into the financial reality of it all. For this first part, we're keeping it simple. We're looking strictly at the numbers that have been reported and budgeted. No guesswork, no speculation, just the hard facts.
So, how did this deficit build up? Well, it wasn't just one bad year, you know? You take the operating deficit from the 2023/24 financial year, and then you add the projected deficit for the next year, 2024-25, put those two together, and bang, you've got a total shortfall of around $325,000 over just 2 years.
And here's where things get, well, kind of weird. It's a bit of a paradox, really. If you look at the budget for 2024-25, the revenue was actually projected to jump up to almost $1 million. You'd think that's great news, right? But here's the twist. Even with all that extra cash expected to come in, the operating deficit was projected to get worse. So more money coming in the door, but the bottom line was actually looking bleaker. How does that happen?
Okay, so with that financial backdrop, you can see why this all came to a head. It led directly to a critical decision point for the Council on December 15, 2025. They had a big choice to make about funding the authority.
So remember that big $650,000 number we started with? Let's break down exactly what that's made of, because it's not just one big check. First, you've got the ongoing annual operating subsidy, which is about $365,000. On top of that, there's a new cash injection of $170,000. And finally, the council agreed to waive rent and overheads, which adds up to another, $112,800? You add all those pieces together, and there's your total annual commitment from the community.
Okay, so the financial stakes are pretty clear, right? We've got a big deficit and a huge annual funding commitment. But here's where the story pivots. The crucial point isn't just about the money anymore, it's about the choice that was made in response to it. It's a governance story now. And that brings us right into our third section, a conscious governance choice. And I use that word conscious for a reason. This wasn't something that just happened. It was a deliberate decision, made when there were very clear different options available.
You can really picture it like a fork in the road for the council. Down one path, they had the option to bring in outside help, independent specialists who could do a deep dive, a full review of the finances and operations. That idea was definitely on the table. But they chose the other path, to let the existing board and management handle it, to try and stage a recovery from the inside.
And this is so important to understand. This wasn't a case of, oh, we didn't think of that. Choosing to go forward without an independent review was an active, conscious decision. The opportunity for an outside look was right there. It was available. It just wasn't the path the majority decided to take.
Now, to really get the full picture here, we need to zoom out a little bit and look at some history. Because it turns out, this decision, well, it fits a certain pattern. It's actually pretty consistent with how governance issues at the authority have been handled before.
So what happens when you put all these pieces together? You've got the shaky finances, you've got the big funding decision, and you've got this pattern of governance. It all leads us to one final and really important question for the public.
Okay, let's just do a quick recap of the key facts. Point 1, we have an accumulated operating deficit of about $325,000. Point 2, the community is on the hook for an annual financial exposure that's getting close to $650,000. And point 3, a deliberate choice was made to skip an independent specialist review and try for an internal fix instead. Got it? Those are the core facts.
And all of that brings us to the one big question we have to ask. The real takeaway here is this. When you look at all these facts, does choosing to continue without an independent specialist review actually increase the financial risk to the community? Especially, and this is the key part, especially when the amount of public money involved keeps going up and up. That's the central question that this whole situation leaves us with.